So if you are out there looking to purchase a property and you want to consider another style of home other than a single family home, this video is for you because I'm going to be explaining the differences between a townhome, a condominium, and then a villa home. We'll get to all of the differences as far as the pros and cons of them and to see if one of those styles of homes is good for you. If we've never met before, my name is Anita Cordell and I make videos about Kansas City, what it's like to live here, what it's like to play here, what it's like to work here, the eating, the dining, the recreation, and all things the weather as well. I'm also a licensed real estate agent and team lead of the Yellow Brick Group, and we help people just like you buy, sell, relocate, and invest right here in our amazing city. Why? Because there's no place like home. Now before we get started, I want to invite you to go down into the comments section, and while you're watching this video, if there is something that I say or something that you don't agree with, or say you're living in one of the styles of properties that I mentioned, go ahead and put your comments down below because people who are watching these videos will learn from your comments as well, and it will help this video boost as well. And feel free to write comments below. And also, as you're watching this video, if you ever want to make an appointment with me, my contact information is below in the descriptions. There's also a link that goes right to my calendar so that we can set up a consultation and I can help with your real estate goals. Now before we go into the differences between the townhomes, the condominiums, and the villas, you'll want to make sure that you understand an HOA. Now here in Kansas City, pretty much all of these properties will have an HOA, or they will be residing in an HOA. That means it's a homeowners association. That means that the property is confined to the rules and regulations of an HOA. So you want to make sure that your real estate agent gets a copy of the homeowners association's covenants and restrictions, and you'll want to make sure that you read them. Your real estate agent can read them as well and explain to you the highlights of it, but my imploration and my suggestion and my biggest tip in any of the properties that you buy is that you read and you fully understand the covenants and restrictions, because there will be some things that will define rules and regulations of what you as a homeowner need to follow in order to purchase one of these. One of the examples is that there is one big fee that is called a transfer fee. Not all the homeowners associations have this, but it is a transfer fee that you will have to pay as a buyer that transfers home ownership to you as a new buyer. Now, you'll want to know what that transfer fee is because sometimes it can be a little hefty, but that's just one example. Another example is that there may be restrictions on there such as fences or variations of things that you can or cannot do to the properties. It's just making sure that the homes around the area and in that subdivision are cohesive and that you follow certain rules. And some of those rules may surprise you, so make sure that you read those covenants and restrictions. Now I'm going to be covering 3 different styles of homes outside of single family homes. The first one is the condominium, the second one is a patio or / villa, and then the third one is a townhome. So what is a condo? A condo, also known as a condominium, is a residential unit that is owned by an individual. That individual can be an investor or an LLC of sorts. But it is a unit inside a building, very, very similar to an apartment complex, but the biggest difference is there is no landlord. Instead, each unit is individually owned and is part of the overall umbrella of the community within that building. Now, as far as what the individual owns, they own everything that is within that unit. So basically, if you were comparing it to an apartment, whatever is inside that apartment unit is where you live and where you reside. Well, it's the same thing with a condo, except you own it. One of the things about a condo is that it does feel a little bit smaller, but it is an easy way to own your own property. And some people will take their condo and they will turn around and rent it, and we'll talk about that a little later. Now let's talk about a townhome. So a townhome is another type of multi-family dwelling. Unlike a condominium where you have somebody above you, below you, possibly next to you on each side, a townhome is typically where you might just have someone right next to you, connecting wall in between between you and your neighbor. And sometimes it can be on both sides, depending on if you're on a corner or not, but it usually has a connecting wall. There's no one above you and there's nobody below you. Now, there are some cases of townhomes where they're standalone, but that's very rare here in the Kansas City area. As far as what you own when you purchase a townhome, basically you own and control the interior, the exterior, as well as the land that the structure is on. Now, out of the 3 properties that I am going to list, that's condos, townhomes, and then the patio style homes. The townhomes feel, and the feedback that I have received is that people who live in townhomes typically feel a little more independent than the other styles. And usually when you purchase a townhome, you will notice that on the street there's rows of townhomes that look almost identical to yours. The 3rd property that I'm talking about today are villas. And basically a villa is also commonly known as a patio home. So here in the Kansas City metropolitan area, our MLS, which is the multiple listing service, actually has the patio and villas in the same category. So if I were to list a patio home, it would also be in the same category as a villa. But they're also known as carriage homes. They're also known as cluster homes because they actually cluster around a certain area. They're also called garden homes. They're just a unique style of property that are often centered around some kind of structure or a unique feature like a courtyard. Despite being called a patio home, it is very common for these properties to not have a patio on the premises. The key feature of a patio or villa style home is that it incorporates one shared wall between an individual's home and another living space. And that other living space could be as simple as a gated area or an exterior landscaping area or even a fence. Very similar to the townhome, an owner of a patio or villa owns the interior as well as a part of the lawn area. Usually there's just an area around the patio or villa that the owner owns, and sometimes it can be as small as 3 feet. So you'll want to read the covenants and restrictions when it comes to especially the patio and villas. The interesting thing about patio villa homes is that they are almost always in a maintenance provided community, and a lot of them are in 55 plus communities as well, like the active adult communities. All right, so we're gonna talk about the layout of the land basically when it comes to these 3. So one of the biggest differences between the 3 properties is the layout of each one and the level of privacy that you have in each community. As I mentioned before, a condominium is very similar to an apartment complex. However, the townhome and the patio villa style properties have a little more independence, with the independent style of the townhomes being the highest. And with that layout, when it comes to the condominium, you are an individual that resides in a unit in a much larger building. That means you're going to have to share more of your space with other people. This makes it a little bit more challenging if you were wanting the privacy of a townhome but wanted the lifestyle of a condo. It just doesn't happen. Condos are typically also on one level. That means that there's not typically a 2-story condominium unless you get into the luxury condominiums, but most of the condominiums are on one level, just like an apartment. On the other hand, a townhome oftentimes here in Kansas City is 2 stories. There are a few that are 3 stories. And then the patio and villa style properties are ranch, but they can also be a 1.5 stories or even a reverse 1.5 stories. Now, due to the fact that townhomes as well as some patio villas can have that extra floor, they can also appear a lot more spacious. And so we'll talk about that a little bit later when we're trying to help you decide whether or not this is the type of floor plan that you want. One thing to note about the patio villa homes is that there's usually no yard to a patio villa. And in fact, there's a courtyard, like I mentioned, how the patio villa homes are centered around some kind of courtyard where there's like a green space, or there might be a garden that's a shared garden or whatever. So there's no real fencing that can be put up. So you'll want to make sure that you understand that as well about layout of the land. Versus a townhome, you can have a fence often. So if you have an animal, you might want to take into consideration that as well. Patio villa style homes are also called zero lot lines, meaning that they don't incorporate a side yard or a backyard that separates the property from its neighbors. In many regions, these style homes are constructed near golf courses or some kind of community, especially retirement communities. Since patio villa homes are a little bit smaller, a lot of times people will downsize or they'll move in to retire, and they love it because it's just a lot easier to manage. Now, it is important to know that I am a licensed real estate agent, and there are certain aspects that I cannot answer when it comes to whether or not a certain property is safe or not, or whether a community is safe or not. We give you resources to go and look at that. Like, you can go to crimereports.com. You can also go to niche.com. These websites will tell you what the rating is when it comes to safety. The National Association of Realtors has made a declaration for us to follow so that we do not discriminate against anyone, and so therefore we cannot say whether something is safe or not, because it may be different than you would think or someone else would think as far as whether or not something is safe. But I will say this, that it's important to consider this topic, because a lot of times when people are purchasing condominiums, they like condominiums better because there's usually security guard at the front desk. You have to enter into the building with fobs. Sometimes you even have to have a fob to get into the elevator. There's a lot more restrictions when it comes to who is even authorized to be in the building versus a little bit more of a freestanding property like a townhome or a villa. With that being said, there are a lot of people that believe that condominiums are a lot safer when it comes to who enters the building, just because of the security guards at the desk. Now, another thing to consider amongst the three of them is the Homeowners Association, or what we call HOA. Now, when you buy these properties, pretty much all of them are going to have an HOA, and I'll cover the price of them a little bit later, but you'll want to make sure that you read those covenants and restrictions, like I said, because homeowners associations can be the biggest difference between whether or not you purchase a townhome or whether or not you purchase a condominium or a patio villa property. The reason why I say it's important to know the HOAs is because the HOAs will manage things differently depending on the area or the subdivision that you would live in. You will just need to know what the HOA is covering. For instance, on a townhome, the HOA is not going to cover the inside of your property, but they will cover the grounds and upkeep the area around it. Another thing is the patio villa style properties, they're not going to take care of the inside, neither will the condominiums, but there's certain points outside the scope of the interior that they will cover. Oftentimes the condominium will have a lounge area. They might even have two pools. They might have a big clubhouse, a fitness area, as well as some other things. Another thing to know about the HOA when it comes to townhomes, condominiums, patio villas is that sometimes you are not allowed to rent your property, and then other times you are. HOA regulations can be widespread when it comes to what they will or will not allow a homeowner to do within that property. Now, when we're talking about the HOA, this leads me to amenities. When you are considering a condo or a townhome or a patio villa, there are certain amenities that are going to be associated with that property. I will say that not all townhome communities are going to be the same, comparably speaking, to other townhomes. The same way with condominiums. You might have one condominium that offers a certain amenity where the other one does not. But it's important to know what those amenities are. Now, because condominiums have more shared space, there's usually more amenities that are involved with the condos. And of course, your monthly HOA is contributing to the cost of these amenities, so you would expect more amenities for sure. And townhomes and patio villa homes will have less than condominiums, and it's typically because you own your property rather than having a unit inside with a whole bunch of shared space. And a lot of new construction townhome communities and patio villas offer more amenities these days, like a clubhouse, as well as a pool and even a playground. Now we're going to talk about affordability and the cost of the three of them. We're going to start with condos. The reason why is because they actually are the cheapest when it comes to purchasing and affordability. At the time of this recording, there were 170 condominiums for sale, and the cheapest one was $92,000. Can you believe that? The lowest priced condominiums here in KC have an HOA fee of about $300 a month, and then the luxury condominiums have an HOA fee of about $1,200 a month. Now the next style I'm going to cover is the patio villas, and at the time of this recording there were 234 properties on the market or getting ready to go up on the market. The lowest priced property was $110,000, and they went all the way up to about $2 million with an average sales price of $235,000. As I mentioned before, there are a lot of villas that are a part of the 55 plus active adult community, but you are not limited to being in a 55 plus community. But the chances are pretty high that you will be in a 55 plus community or a maintenance provided community. HOA fees range anywhere between $500 to $1,500 a month. And to finish out the affordability about townhomes, at the time of this recording, there were 200 townhomes for sale. They ranged anywhere between $119,000 all the way up to $1.9 million, with the average sales price of $315,000. What's interesting is that most of the lower priced townhomes were 2 bedrooms, 2 bath homes, but as you increase obviously in price, you can get all the way up to a 5 bedroom, 4 bath townhome, and most of them are 2-story. And to end this, we're going to talk about who these properties are most suitable for. And when we're talking about the patio and villa style homes, those are typically more suitable to those who are downsizing, retiring, if you want to get into a retirement community or some kind of maintenance provided community. They're often centered around, say, a golf course or some kind of community feel, which is something that is commonly describing patio and villa style homes, is just that community feel that people get in that style of home. Due to the fact that townhomes are a little bit bigger, they are very conducive for a family or someone who is wanting to grow with a family, as well as those who are not necessarily wanting to get a single family property, but they want to own something. This is a good option. And then as far as condominiums, if it's suited for you, you might be a student, you might be a business traveler and have a condominium that is something where you travel to a lot. You might invest in that condominium just to have a place to stay. And other times people buy condominiums for a second home, such as a vacation home. Then other people will invest to rent out. Now I will say this, that condominiums are pretty popular to rent out. I actually have a client that buys condominiums once in a while. He buys them downtown Kansas City. There's several condominium complexes down there, and he rents them out to some of the medical students that are going through some of the colleges really close to downtown. Now I will say that this is again really important to make sure that you read the covenants and restrictions, because while condominiums are pretty popular to rent out, there are restrictions. So the property management companies will constantly keep track of who owns the property and who is renting it out. And a lot of times they will have a certain percentage. So like they would say, we want to make sure that 75% of everybody who lives in our condominium complex or condominium building own the property. And if it starts to get lower than 75%, then they will not allow for somebody to come in and purchase the condominium to rent out. So they will ask, is this an investment property or is this something that you are going to live in? Then they have the right to turn you down because it might not be conducive for the rules and restrictions of that. So be sure again and read those restrictions. Now once again, I want to invite you to comment below. So if you live in one of these style homes, I would love to hear from you. I would love to know, do you love it? Do you hate it? What are some of the amenities that you like? What are some of the amenities that are offered to you? Where at in the Kansas City metropolitan area do you live? What subdivision do you live in? I'd love to hear from you. And if you have questions about some of the complexes here, I would love to help you out as well. And don't forget, like this video, subscribe to my channel, and click that bell so that you can be the first to learn about all the stuff that I post when it comes to real estate as well as Kansas City. And don't forget, go out and live your best Kansas City life.